like to see the prayer? Opening prayer. You don't want me to do it, I'll get a lightning striking. Okay. You all stand and...
Heavenly Father, please bless this meeting. Give us insight, wisdom, give us understanding. Give us a plan and guidance in leading our country out of the mess that we're in. Please, Heavenly Father, help us. In your name, amen.
Amen. Who would like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Robert, you want to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure. Hand on heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so welcome to the last winter meeting. Hopefully by next time it's springtime. First of all, how many people here are active members on AMAC? You know, gone through and signed up for AMAC on AMAC. Cool. All right. So you guys get the emails from AMAC. Do you guys get the one? It's one that's called the Association of Mature American Citizens Media Contact. There was a really good article this month. It's called "No Doubt Seniors Are Tough Old Birds." Have you read that? Has anybody read that? It's an excellent article, and it talks about how that it's not. I just read kind of a quick excerpt. It's not easy getting old. When times are bad, they're worse for the elderly. No better example is there in times which we've been living in the last 12 months or so in the year of COVID-19, or as I call it, CCP. There's no doubt that the older we are, the more physically vulnerable you can be to the virus, but there's evidence that aging can turn us into mentally tougher old birds, as the saying goes. According to Rebecca Weber, she's the daughter of our founders. There was concern across the board when the pandemic got started there would be a mental health crisis among the older population due to the virus-based restrictions on contact with friends and family. But according to an article in JAMA, the Journal of American Medical Association, there is evidence suggesting that counter to expectations, older adults as a group may be more resilient to the anxiety, depression, and stress-related mental health disorders characteristic of younger populations during the initial phase of the pandemic. Why is that? Because we're older, we are more mature, we've lived through sometimes worse than this. How many here are Vietnam vets? How many are spouses of Vietnam vets? How many are spouses of military vets? So we've been through it. God loved the spouses in the military because they put up with a lot more than most people even think. So we've been through that. So when this thing hit, yeah, there was consternation. There was a lot of information. Some of it good, some of it not so good. Some of it was used and found out later that we shouldn't have. There's been a lot going on with this, but we're resilient. You look at the kids out there, and I'm talking kids, anything under 40, that they've been taught. They've been taught more. They haven't been taught to be resilient. They haven't been taught about our Constitution and our rights and our and the strength of this nation. Not near. We've been there. We've done that. So I think that's why we don't have that issue. So I just wanted to bring that one up. And if you haven't read it, you check your email and read it. It's a really good article. Some good news. Tennessee is in the process of passing constitutional carry. I've been on the phone like crazy about it, making sure that unlike Idaho and Montana, that it is for all Americans. And what I've been doing is I call these guys up and say, I'm calling from the free great state of Alaska, and I really want to see this not a resident requirement only. Because I got a buddy of mine in Chattanooga I would love to come down and see, visit, spend my tourist dollars, and be able to be armed at the same time. And Tennessee's doing that. I just found out that Utah just passed and signed their constitutional carry, and all Americans that are visiting Utah can carry concealed. So like I said, Idaho and Montana, you have to be a resident in order to carry concealed without a permit. Now if you have a concealed carry permit in Alaska, they will recognize that. But like I've told them, why would I want to go out and spend the money and the effort in NCIS background check, especially today, and to get a concealed carry permit that only need, how many times to go to Idaho? Like one or maybe one time in the rest of my lifetime. So, so there's that. Then some updates on the vaccine. We are now 65 and above age bracket. We're now at 59% full vaccination. That's doing pretty good. Again, so your choice of what you want to do, but that's the latest figures. Senator Gray Davis, everybody know who she is? She's a socialist senator out of Anchorage. She has put together SB 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, and 46. And what all of these are anti-police. Every one of them. This is Black Lives Matter to the nth degree, except up to, but not including, defunding of police. I put in written testimony yesterday. I thought the public testimony was yesterday, and it was actually Thursday. But I did send it, and I went after it, and I went after it hard. So we need to stay on top of that. And when those things come up, by all means, call in. It was really sad. There was one person that testified on this SB 7 that she had forward. And that what this one is it requires the public safety, the state troopers, to put on their website what their police policies are. Wait a minute, don't we all know what the police policies are? Protect and serve? Take care, stop the bad guys, protect the innocent. Anyway, so she's got that one up. And these other ones, they're just ridiculous. But then lastly, so keep an eye on that, and by all means, what I was going to say was there was one person that testified. Guess who they were? Planned Parenthood. And you can imagine the response that Mike Shower and the committee got. Racism, systemic racism, 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 racism. So, yeah. Yes, ma'am. SB 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, and 46. Lastly, for all of you in Anchorage, and then for the folks that are watching it on live stream, for all those Anchorage folks, if you do what has happened in the past, if you get multiple ballots, or you see ballots that are on the ground outside of the mailboxes, which has happened, you want to get hold of Mike Shower, Senator Shower, And you want to make sure that if you get if you get multiples, like if you got a previous homeowner or a previous renter and you get 3 or 4 different people, hang on to them. Do not throw them away. Get hold of Mike. And he wants those. He's gotten a lot of testimony about this situation, but nobody has kept them. So Kawasaki is saying, well, that's not provable, proof. Well, these people, they're not under oath, but every one of them said, yes, that I know the difference between a ballot and an application, and these were ballots, period, end of conversation. So they did everything but do it under oath. So what we need to do is, if you guys get these extra ballots, hold on to them and get hold of Mike. I know that one of the ladies that was here, she had actually state troopers come and talk to her about her situation. The other one is, if these drop boxes that are around Anchorage, if you see people putting a whole bunch of ballots in there, you got your cell phone, video it, and then call the cops. Get on the, get their license plate. Get everything that you need to do.
Make sure you get their license plate.
Yeah, get a description, the whole 9 yards, and get with it, because that's the only way this is going to stop. Because right now we got a really good shot at a conservative mayor, and maybe getting rid of 1 or 2 of the extremist socialist assembly. But the only way we're going to happen is we have to take back our vote. So that's really important. So lastly, I want to bring in Kelly Tshibaka here on a high note and a laughter. Guy goes into a bar and there's a robot bartender. Since the minimum wage increase was increased to $15, the owner had to replace his regular human bartender. The robot says, "What will you have?" The guy says, "Martini." The robot brings back the best martini ever and says to the man, "What's your IQ?" The guy says, 168. The robot then proceeds to talk about physics, space exploration, and medical technology. The guy leaves, but he's curious, so he goes back into the bar sometimes later. The robot bartender says, "What will you have?" The guy says, "Martini." Again, the robot makes a great martini, gives it to the guy and says, "What's your IQ?" The guy says 100. The robot then starts talking about NASCAR, Budweiser, and John Deere tractors. The guy leaves but finds this very interesting, so he thinks he'll try it one more time. He goes back into the bar. The robot says, "What will you have?" "Martini." And the robot brings him another great martini. The robot then says, "What's your IQ?" The guy says, about 50. The robot leans in real close and says, "So, you people still happy that you voted for Biden?" On that laughter, Kelly Tshibaka, Department of Administration, DOA, and that does not mean a dead on arrival.
That's right. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. That is a very funny joke. Thank you so much for having me today. It's really an honor to get to be with you. My parents live down in Nikiski, and they're very active in their senior center. And I've never had the opportunity to be in this senior center, so it's like being with extended family in a way. Every time I'm down there, that's where we go eat lunch, so I'm very familiar with that community. It's nice to get to be with this community. So for those who I haven't had the opportunity to meet yet, you did hear him right. My last name sounds like the Star Wars character. If you're wondering, is that really her last name? It is. It doesn't look like that when you spell it. So if you see my last name, it looks like a bunch of scary consonants put together. When I saw it for the first time, I thought, oh goodness, how do you say that? And then when I heard it, I was like, oh, that's easy. I love that movie series, so that's how you say that. If anyone asks you, you're now on the inside, and you can say, I know how to say that, do you? And it can become kind of this running inside joke. I love that you said it's not dead on arrival. When I became the commissioner of the Department of Administration, I was sort of challenged when they said, we want you to start going around speaking about the great things the Department of Administration does. Look at this wonderful audience we have today. Usually it's kind of like the Department of Boring Station. What do you talk about that you do that's interesting at the Department of Administration? We have a lot of really incredible employees that work at our department, and we've been up to some really exciting things, which is why I suspect you're here today, because you've heard some of those things. But I want to start with the story behind the story, which is why I'm even working at this department and why we've set out to do some of the transformative things that we do. And because we have some people that are watching online, I'm going to really try and not move, even though my temptation is to come out and see you and get down the aisles. I know it'll be very, very hard for you to follow me. It's okay, awesome, because I'm a little bit of a mover. All right, so my story is that my parents moved here actually long before I was born, and they started out up here totally homeless. And they came up pursuing a dream. They wanted a dream for more opportunity. They wanted to start life on their own and see what they could do. And Alaska was a place of endless opportunity. My dad had served in Vietnam. Thank you for all of you, we saw the hands, who've served in the military, all of the families who've helped support our military service members. We have a lot of those people who've made a lot of sacrifice here in Alaska. My mom ended up becoming one of the first people up at Prudhoe Bay at startup. So we've got a lot of pioneers and adventurers, people with a real perseverance spirit. So those are my parents. And they pursued that American dream ladder. We've got the Keep America Great, Make America Great Again. America is an exceptional place. That's the story my parents lived up here. They worked their way up that America dream ladder. And that's the story I knew as a kid. I really remember sitting on my dad's lap at 3 years old. We lived out here on Lucille Road in a startup house. It was the one I remember. And we were watching President Reagan. And I said, can I be a president when I grow up? My dad said, you can be anything you want to be. And I totally believed him because I saw that be my parents' story. They could be anything they wanted to be. My dad ended up being a union electrician over at ATU. It became ACS. He was part of the ACS conversion. My mom was an auditor. In my memory, it was the oil companies that were in the gold tower. There are 2 skyscrapers in Alaska, the gold and the silver. My mom worked in the gold one. This is how I understood life as a kid, right? When I was a kid, I don't know what you all do in the winters for fun. What I did in the winter was I went down to the gold tower and learned how to use Excel and help my mom audit papers. So this whole career I'm in started when I was really young. Because there's a lot of cold days in Alaska when you're not ice skating, when you're not skiing. Don't you go down to the gold tower and audit papers? Isn't that what? No? Well, that's what I did. So if it wasn't that, it was learning how to hunt, fish, and fix things with dad. So this is the Alaska that I grew up in. My parents ended up seeing me get into college. So Alaska changes the course of our family destiny. And then I got into law school. Who goes to law school? So that's what you do. And then I get this amazing job in Washington, D.C., where I intend to go to pay off my law school loans. Well, it takes a while to do that when you're in government, just not a private sector job, so it just takes a little bit longer. I started out my career doing something I didn't know there was actually much of a career field in, but it fit me perfectly. It was doing internal affairs on the government. So I think that's something that all of us kind of secretly love, right? I got to be in the Department of Justice, so I thought of it as, who's going to put the justice back in the Department of Justice? And I just totally loved doing what I got to do. We used methods like inspections, investigations, audits. I know how to do that. And doing things like overlooking and seeing, how do we do things like the FBI, the INS at the time, the Bureau of Prisons, the U.S. attorneys, the DEA, all of that was in the Department of Justice. I learned how to oversee the things that we do. How do you make government of the people, by the people, for the people, so it actually works for us and not against us? How do we make it accountable to, representative of, and serve the people instead of us not really knowing what they're doing or how they're doing it? So I got to do some really cool projects. Well, then I was always a little bit passionate about 9/11. I was in law school when that happened. The director of national intelligence stood up because the 9/11 report finished, and they said, the reason 9/11 happened is because the intelligence community agencies, there's a lot of them, DOJ is one of them, we weren't talking to each other. So bureaucrats are being bureaucrats and they weren't cooperating. How do we get these people to work together More bureaucracy was the answer that we came up with. So we created the D&I. And I got to go over and be one of the startup employees over there. And when I started in the Internal Affairs Office. So how do we make all 17 Intel community agencies work together? And who's going to make sure they're doing their job and not working against America, but working for America? So I was part of that office. Worked over at the D&I for a while. That's classified. Moving on. So then I worked over at the Federal Trade Commission. Joined the Internal Affairs Office there. Doing trade. There's, billions of dollars of trade every year. Then I jumped over to the Postal Service. Anybody heard of them? Yes. Yeah, daily, right? I used to think about them what I think most Americans think about them. And then I got in there. Man, that organization is amazing. The infrastructure that undergirds our logistics for transporting parcels every day, millions and millions of them. And I got to be part of the Internal Affairs Agency, and I got to be the chief data officer. So we use data to actually move all of our parcels and mail. It is so cool what they can do and how we can track every single person who touches every one of your packages. Did you know that? We can even see every bin your letter drops in along the way. It's fascinating. So we can track what we're doing with your packages. We can track narcotics in the mail. We can track healthcare fraud in the mail system. It's fascinating. So I got to learn all about that. But guess what? Alaska has always been number one in my heart. You can take a girl out of Alaska, but you can't take Alaska out of a girl. My family's still up here. My heart's still up here. I'd send my kids up every summer to live up here because, this is a heck of a lot more fun than DC, right? And so I'm watching everything the whole time, and you know what I'm seeing? This just isn't the state that I grew up in, right? When I grew up here, you saw what happened to my family. I'd run outside. My dad would say at the beginning of summer break, "Go have fun, kid. Come home when the sun goes down." And he meant it. When would the sun go down in the summer? August. He was good with that. And they didn't have a care in the world because the only thing that was threatening to me were the bears. And I knew how to deal with the bears. Thanks, Dad. So we were good. Well, I can't say that now, and you all know why. What do I have to worry about with my kids? Not the bears, right? And then I'm watching what's happening with my parents. They were fine when they retired. They're not fine anymore. Why? Our economy. Our economy's been in a long-term slump. Alaska's got economy problems. We have more resource than any state in the nation. How's that possible? And then I think about our education. Right? If little Kelly were here today, I'm not sure she'd be reading. Only 3 out of 10 of our kids are literate. I'm not sure she could do math. Only 3 out of 10 of our kids are proficient in math. Would we even have had the chance to move out of the homeless camp? Now, I didn't live in the homeless camp. My parents were okay. They got out. But with the education scores and the economy and the opportunities we have, you have to wonder, would my parents have been able to do now what they were able to do then? These are the things that inspired me when Governor Dunleavy ran for office. I saw what he was saying, I saw what he was doing, and I thought, we have a chance to turn the state around right now. So I cold emailed him. I don't know him. I don't have big contacts in big places. I knew he was getting contacted by hundreds of people. I said, look, this is my skill set. I don't know how else to explain this, but it's like I'm a bureaucracy whisperer. I know how to make good government happen, and that's not an oxymoron. So this is what I can do. Is there's a place for me on your team. I want to come home to help. He said, I've got a place for you. Would you come home? Like, yeah, I want to come home. And so we packed up the 5 kids, sold the house, and moved home. And I got to be commissioner. What are we trying to do? What can you do in a Department of Administration to help Alaska? We don't really touch education. We don't really touch the economy. We don't really touch crime. What can you do? When I'm sitting here talking to you about administration, this is what we can do. So what we do is we've got the ability to touch all of the departments. The departments, you can think of it like this. When you look at a brick wall, I wish we had one here, but when you look at a brick wall, the departments in the government are like the bricks. We want you to focus on them. Who touches crime? Public safety. Who touches health? Health and social services, right? You get the idea. Who touches commerce? There's a couple of them that can affect your commerce. What are we? We're the mortar. When you look at a brick wall, do you ever go, check out that mortar? Well, I hope not. right? Because if you're seeing the mortar, there's something wrong. There's splats on your brick wall, right? And you're going, someone didn't align that right. But let me ask you a question. If there was no mortar, what would those bricks be? Loose. A pile of bricks on the floor, right? That's what the Department of Administration is. When we're doing our job right, everything's in alignment, everything's strong, everything's built, and you don't see us. That's the Department of Administration. Or think of it like a body. The other departments are like the organs. They're the things that are your lifeline. They're the things that you're interacting with. They're the things that are keeping Alaska strong. We're simply the blood system, providing them the nutrients and what they need. So for those who don't understand, what we do, we run the infrastructure. Right now we run the leasing and the facilities. We run the contracts. We run all the personnel. We have the largest workforce in the state of Alaska. There's about 15,000 people in the executive branch. We run the IT system for the state. We run the retirement and benefits and the health system for the employees and the retirees of the state. It's kind of relevant for some people in this room. We cover about 10% of the lives of the state of Alaska through that. We have the insurance plan for the state, workers' comp for the state. We're also running a bunch of the public-facing programs. So we have the DMV, which has been in the news recently, Public Defender Agency. We run the Office of Public Advocacy, which takes care of a lot of vulnerable Alaskans, people like elder care fraud victims, children in need of aid. Those cases are over in OPA. We run the public broadcasting system. We run the Office of the Office of Administrative Hearings. So it's a court system in the state. So we have a lot of different portfolios that all sort of fall into the Department of Administration. This is what we've been focusing on. When we touch so much, we can really change how the state does business. And why does that matter for you? What are we talking about recently that are kind of these pressing issues in the state? It's how much our budget is running. Who knows the deficit number right now? That's in our federal government. How much in our state? You're absolutely right. How much is our state deficit this year? Does anybody know?
Can't hear you.
How much is our state deficit this year? Is that better?
$2 billion?
$2 billion. It's $2 billion. Does anybody know what our state budget was a decade ago? That's recent memory for everybody in this room.
Half a billion?
We were running a massive, we had a massive increase, a massive surplus. We've drained about $14 billion from our bank account. Yeah, I wish I had $14 billion in my bank account. We used to. So we had a huge surplus and now we're in deficit, and that difference is around those numbers. The reason that we're paying so much money is to run our government. That's all we're paying for, is to run state government. And so the question that I'm interested in is, what can DOA do to decrease the cost of running government? Because now with $2 billion, you can't just bridge that by cutting costs of government. Your budget is around $10 billion a year to run things. Some of that's state funds, some of that's federal funds, but that's what it's running you. So I don't want to give the impression that that's just state funds, but you've got to figure out, how do we reduce costs of government? How do we increase sources of revenue to bridge this gap? Those are the questions everybody's asking. Let me ask you a question. What are sources of revenue that we can use? Typically, we've used taxing businesses in the state, but now we don't have enough coming in from taxes for businesses. So what are the other sources of revenue people have been talking about? You've heard some of them discussed. What are they?
Taxes is all you hear.
Taxing individuals, getting more businesses coming in. Yep. We've talked about a lottery. So you get the ideas of things that's one side of the bridge. The other side of the bridge is, let's cut costs of government. That's the only thing DOA can do. We don't have a lot of revenue makers in DOA, right? So here are some of the things we've started to do. We've started to think about, how can we leverage technology, modernize our technology to reduce costs? For example, when we started out our administration, we saw that we were doing all of our different back-end functions across all the departments. So for example, our state government is about the size of the EPA, of the federal EPA. If you took just the federal EPA, what would you think if I told you every little office in the EPA had its own procurement office for doing contracts, had its own little HR office. It also has its own little IT office. It also makes its own travel arrangements. It has its own accounts payable office, its own accounts receivable office, every little office in EPA. We would listen to that and go, boy, that sounds really redundant, doesn't it? Does that make sense to us as Americans that we're all paying taxpayer dollars for that? No. The EPA as an agency should have one IT office, one procurement office, right? One HR office. Doesn't that make sense? Because it only needs one centralized office to do that as an agency. Well, that's what Governor Dunleavy thought too. So when he came in, he said, let's centralize HR, let's centralize procurement. There was already an order to centralize IT, so let's continue that. Let's do that. Here's the challenge, Alaskans. We've tried this before and it's not worked. So why hasn't it worked? Well, coming from the land of good government, if you're going to do it right, you've got to figure out, why didn't it work before? Where are we now? So the as-is assessment, what's the to-be assessment, and then how do we get there well, right? So you've got to do a lot of research and assessment to figure out, how do we do this transformation? That's what we've spent the last 2 years doing. What happened before? Where are we now? How do we get there? What's the roadmap? And then what's it going to look like? So we've started that. I'm proud to say that this took a lot of work from the people in DOA. I'm here to just tell you the good news and the finished product, but I really can't take any of the credit. This has been a huge lift from people in DOA and huge partnership from all of our departments, because this took a lot of work from people who were actually here when it didn't go well. They're actually in the departments and they're like, if we're going to do this right, this is what it's going to be. So for example, when we did procurement, we didn't take all the people who are doing all procurement and then play that we game, the me shop, where you pick up the person and go, yay, let's just drop them in DOA. That's not a good consolidation. A good consolidation says, well, what are you doing in your department that actually touches contracting across the state and isn't just specific to your department? So for example, we left anything construction related in DOT. There's nobody else that's doing transportation construction, right? So why would it make sense to cut and paste them into DOA? That doesn't make sense. Or anything that's really specific to any of the individual agencies. They're the only ones doing that specific procurement. That doesn't make sense to centralize. So they were saying there's about 185 procurement people across the agencies. Now there's only about 65 or so that are centralized in DOA. We only centralize the ones that are doing procurement across DOA. But in the ways that we were doing procurement, like 14 different ways across all the departments, now we're going to do it in one standardized, the same, complete, consistent, same SOPs, same standardized ways. We're not going to have redundancy. We're not going to have different ways of doing procurement so that people who are trying to interact with us and get business, they're going to be confused. Contracts that we've just rolled over before, we're now going to start opening up for competition. And the thing that's really exciting is we now have a different way of doing procurement. So these experts that we've brought in, they've worked with 70 of the top 100 Fortune 100 companies. They've worked with the city of Seattle, cities in New York, cities in New Mexico. They worked with Oregon. They worked with Louisiana, Wyoming, Kansas, Rhode Island. And they said, look, there's this whole different way of doing procurement, which our chief procurement officer, we brought him in as well. He's worked with 5 federal agencies. He knows this way of doing procurement too. They said, you've never done this way of procurement before across the board, and it's called strategic sourcing. If you implement strategic sourcing, which if I'm going to explain it, it's kind of a way of saying, bring agencies in that are buying the same thing and go out to market together with greater purchasing power and get bulk discounts. Does that make sense? That makes sense to me, right? If you do that together, you can drive your spend down. We spend between $700 million and $1 billion on contracts every year. You have greater purchasing power if you purchase together. That makes sense, doesn't it? If you buy more, you can drive down your prices, okay? Instead of going to a retail store, you go to Costco. That makes sense, right? They said if you do that, what we have found using a very conservative methodology, and let me caveat this by saying, these are cost-saving projections. These are estimates. This is over 5 years. We haven't seen this yet. This project's in its infancy. But this is based on actual savings they've had in other places. This is their most conservative estimate. This is after having discounted things based on variables we can't quite wrap our arms around because Alaska is a unique place with its own challenges. Their estimates are that we can save between $98 to $230 million in contracting over 5 years. That's 3% off of our contract spend. That's really exciting. We've already started to put this into practice. Our chief procurement officer has already started getting discounts on contracts just because we started our contracting consolidation at the beginning of last fall. I'll give you an example. I talked to my own department about this. We've had retirement and benefits, and we've had risk management in our department for a long time, right? Consolidated. We've been using the same procurement officers for a long time, consolidated. But you know what we haven't done? We haven't gone to them and said, what if we took your pharmacy benefits manager contract? What if we took your Medicaid or your medical claims processing contract? What if we took your third-party administrator contract, and instead of you guys looking at them individually, you went out to contract together? We would have combined purchasing power, right? They are physically consolidated with me, but we've never actually combined their contracts and went and got bulk purchasing discount. That's strategic sourcing. We just had this conversation this week. Do we think we could get a 1% or 2% discount? We think we could. That makes sense, right, Alaska? We've never even asked the question. Well, that's what our contractor said. If you ask the question, they said, we know the vendors who do this. We've gotten these discounts before. They are so confident, they even offered us a contract. They said, we'll put all our firm's resources out up front and just work on a contingency basis. And we'll come up here and do this for you. We're like, wait a minute. Why would we pay you when we could just keep the savings ourselves? We got this, thanks. We understand what you're saying. So thanks to Governor Dunleavy, because he said consolidate, because we brought in these experts, we're doing it differently this time. We're really confident this is going to work. We did the same thing with HR. You get where I'm going with this? We brought all the HR staff in. They said, this is how you do it differently this time. We were here before. We know how to do it differently. They designed it. We brought some people in to help us with leading best practices in firms across the nation. They identified 70 inefficiencies in HR that could be fixed just by doing this differently through standardization, automation, and consolidation. So now we're targeting those to fix them first. 70 by doing government better. That's easy. IT, we were going to do that last year, but COVID hit. I want to tell you what IT did instead. Shared services, that's the accounts payable, the accounts receivable, the travel. We've been working on that. We've picked up our processing times and dropped our costs significantly in the last 2 years. Let me flip over to what IT did. You're wondering, how can we automate and make things better? How can we save costs? Well, IT, what we decided to do, when the pandemic hit, the governor came to us and said, I want to make sure the workers are safe. You know, we're going to have a situation where we didn't have any telework really in place before COVID. We had less than 1% of our workforce teleworking. It was about 120 people out of 15,000. So we said, okay, we need to pivot. We don't want our workforce locations, our sites, becoming super spreader places. That makes sense? So we got to turn ourselves into a telework workforce. Here's the challenge. That meant we had to turn the government into a digitized government. We were doing everything on paper. How do you set up a telework infrastructure when everything is done in site and on paper? This is a real challenge for DOA. So the governor said, okay, I want you to do this. Can you do it? We said, yes, we can. Well, we're going to do what we can. So in a matter of a couple weeks, we have these superstars in DOA who set this up. A large part of it fell on IT and it fell on our division of personnel. This is what they did. In just a couple weeks, they were able to pivot 6,000 people who are telework eligible, were able to get out into their home locations, their telework locations, and telework. This meant a huge shift in what we were able to do because we had to leverage our network differently. Our network wasn't set up for this, so they had to increase our virtual private network capacity. We needed to make sure that the security on our network is safe, so we didn't have intrusions and vulnerabilities where people were going to be able to access and compromise the security of our network. Our cybersecurity is so much more safe now than it was this time last year, thanks to our people in IT. They were able to quickly purchase and deploy over 4,000 laptops to employees who didn't have a means of being able to have a state employee laptop at home. So we were able to do that. We were able to digitize functions that we didn't have digitized before. Like, I don't mean to say this as a joke, DocuSign. I know that DocuSign's been around for a really long time, but we didn't have it in the state government. We were signing everything on paper. We did signatures live. But how can you do that if everybody's teleworking? Drive around and bring the document to everybody's house? We had COVID, we're not gonna do that. So they had to deploy DocuSign in the state. We were doing a lot of things on paper, like timesheets, personnel evaluations, recruitment, onboarding. We were doing training in person in meetings rooms. Heck, we were doing all of our meetings in conference rooms. How do you shift all of that in a matter of weeks when you've got everybody now dispersed in their homes? It really required this big lift of digitizing our performance reviews. We started digitizing timesheets. We're about a third of the way through. We're working on more of those this year. We digitized onboarding. We digitized recruitment. We shifted to a digitized training mechanism. So now it's not just the people who can jump on an airplane and fly to where the training is. Yes, that's how we did training before. Now everybody can do training contemporaneously with thousands of courses online and available to them. We did meetings. Now we have MS Teams, so we've got 8,000 people using MS Teams all at the same time. We have conference meetings happening all the time instead of just whoever can get access to a meeting room. All of this got deployed all at the same time over 2020 in just a couple of months. It was a huge lift. I imagine you're thinking, I'm a little bit nervous about this big telework thing. I've heard this question before. All these government employees suddenly at their homes. How do I know they're working? Okay, fair point. I've been from the internal affairs branch. I've seen time and attendance abuse. So this is how we know. We personally had a performance review system before that was largely based around being able to see people come into the office. I know you're here. I know you're working. I can see what you're doing. Therefore, your performance evaluation and your metrics are based on that. We had things in there like met their hours in the office. Those are some of the variables we had. Well, how do I know you're meeting your hours if I don't see you? We don't. So we really quickly had to modify our performance metrics so that they were based on deliverables and outcomes, things accomplished, rather than behaviors like time in office. That's a simple concept, right? I'll give you an example. One of my employees asked me, I don't understand how this is going to work. Can you help me understand? I said, what do you do? And his response was, well, my job is to produce classifications. So classifications are what is your job duty and what position are you classified in? So we have a structure for how our personnel system works and what your job lines fall into. And his job is to classify positions. You're in the accounting class, you're in the tech class, you're in the health class. Do you understand that? He said, I produce this many a week. Let's say it's 12 a week. And I said, okay, so if you produce 12 a week, you're supposed to turn those into your supervisor. You would meet expectations. If you produce 15, you exceed expectation. If you produce 10, you don't meet expectations. Is that accurate? He said, yes. So at the end of the week, if you're turning in 12, you're good, right? It doesn't matter how many hours you sat in front of your computer. Is that right? Yeah. So if he needs to take a 3-day weekend, but he turns in 12, he's like, you would be okay with that? I don't care. You got 12 in, that's what we need. You got 12. But if you have to work Saturday to get 12 in, you have to work Saturday to get 12 in. But if you get 15 in, to me, that's telling me that you want a promotion. He lit up. Do you know why he lit up? Because before it didn't matter if he got 15 in or not. He was just measured on how many hours he worked. There was no way to distinguish himself. So now he can actually move ahead in the workforce on a merit. And he was really excited about that. That's how telework's working. So we measured it last year. All of the responses came back from the employees, from our supervisors, from our managers. We actually got more accomplished last year during 2020 because we changed our performance evaluation system than we were getting accomplished before. Our employees were achieving more because they were being measured based on what they were accomplishing rather than on their behaviors. We also saw a lot of our costs for production, our costs for running business went down. Our workers' comp costs went down. Our IT costs, because we transformed and digitized, the cost of all that paper, the cost of manual mistakes, the cost of corrections, a lot of it went down. So the cost of running business has gone down as we've digitized and transformed. Those are some of the ways that doing business in the state of Alaska has changed because of the Department of Administration. And that's what I came to tell you, is some good news about all of that. I'll give you an example in specific numbers. Transforming over to our costs for the IT digitization, we were able to drop rates a couple $1 million for our other departments. We charge them out fees. We've done an assessment of moving to the cloud. That's one of the ways we're increasing cybersecurity. And they've said it will save us tens of millions of dollars a year once we're finished with the transition to the cloud. Those are some of the things that we're doing to try and bridge that other side of the gap from the Department of Administration. I'll pause there so I can take some questions. Yeah?
You have just told us that you are reducing costs in the state government. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, when you listen to conservative talk radio in Anchorage, everybody's mad at Mike because Mike isn't doing anything. Now, my question is, what you just told us here needs to get out to the real world, because Mike is doing something.
Yes.
And people like, just picking one of choice, is Dan Fagan in the Anchorage media is constantly picking on Mike for not doing anything. And we need to get the word out what you're doing.
So I appreciate that. One of the reasons you may have seen me getting out more is precisely to spread the message. So the question, if you didn't hear online, the question is, there's a lot of media chatter that our governor isn't doing anything.
Correct.
Yes. Okay, I work for our governor. I've only been doing things the governor's told us to do. So many of these things I've talked about today are direct administrative orders from Governor Dunleavy. These are all his bright ideas. He has been committed to cutting costs, reducing government, and making these things happen for the last 2 years I've been here. This is why I'm here. And the reason I've been going around sharing all this good news is so that Alaskans can understand that while he's been managing a pandemic and while he's been having to do a lot of other higher level governor things, he's also been supporting me as I've been working to reduce government, reduce costs. As government grows, liberty shrinks, right? Your ability to use your money, your ability to use your freedom shrinks. As we reduce government, what happens? Liberty grows. That's what Governor Dunleavy is committed to. And so you're absolutely right. The exact reason why I've been wanting to come out and talk to community groups like this is to let you know there's a lot of good news. There's a lot of progress. Millions upon millions of dollars of progress has been made. I haven't even told you about all the exciting things we've done in healthcare, including extending great amounts of choice, reducing millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars of costs in our healthcare plan
You need
for
to get
Alaskans.
that in the media. You need to get it out so people see it, because
Talking
that's all
to
the
me,
talk is.
We're talking MSM though,
Yeah.
mainstream media. Two things.
Yes.
You just touched on Medicaid. How are you guys able? Is DOA able to have an impact on Medicaid? Because there's some stuff I just read here just recently. The other one though is, and you touched on when you were talking about your past where you worked at the Postal Service.
Yes.
When you said that you can track a package from bin to bin to bin
Yeah.
to bin to bin, I know this is a big issue with Mike Shower when it comes down to our election absentee ballots. On being able to track that absentee ballot from the time it goes out to the time it gets back. If you talk to Mike about your experience at the Postal Service from that aspect, so I'll leave those two.
Those are both great questions. So on the Medicaid, we have, there is a data team that's working closely together on looking at all the Medicaid transactions that we have so that we can tighten up our spend in Medicaid. So when we did this back at the Postal Service, we would work with the Department of Labor because that was where our healthcare claims were processed through. And when we would find things that looked irregular is the best way to, because we don't know intent. So we want to be really careful before we just scream fraud. Fraud is a really big word, so we don't call it that. There can be mistakes. These could be paper errors. These could be what we don't know if someone just submitted something late. We got it at the wrong time. We don't know intent. and it takes an investigator to go in and look at something. When you see an irregular Medicaid claim, you have to follow each of those claims to the final trail to see what actually happened. They have a really good Medicaid unit over in Hess that looks at these things. And then data analytics is things that it's using math and stuff to look at things that humans can't just catch with their normal eyes or brain. And so we're using data analytics to combine with the Medicaid unit to look and see where can we shore up these things and perhaps look at things to trace from the past or policy things to put in place for the future to make sure all of our dollars are going to the best cases. And so, but you also have to look at irregular claims to see, just because we're catching them now, have they already been cleaned up in the past? Are the feds already caught them, etc.? And so that's what we're working on together as a combined team. On the question about the packages, so I want to put everybody on notice. The Postal Service Inspector General, so there's two groups that do internal affairs of the Postal Service. Postal Service Inspector General has a hotline that you can contact anytime you have a missing parcel, missing mail piece concern. And they log all of those and track them judiciously. We have got some, especially I think out here in Matsu, we've got some funny things happening with missed sortings and packages. The more complaints they get over there, the higher that will raise up for investigations and looks. That's how their metrics work. So whenever you've got something that didn't get to you, look at that. There's also an app that I would highly recommend. They've turned all their data. They have data centers at Postal Service. We have a data unit in the Inspector General's office. Leveraging data. Data is incredibly valuable. Think of it like oil. In the data community, we started saying years ago, data is the new oil. Data is the new oil. The Postal Service is on top of their data, and they've turned it into this app called Informed Visibility. They actually take pictures of all the mail, and they will send you the pictures of all the mail that is supposed to be showing up in your mailbox that day. So for all of us who are snowbirding, all of us who aren't going to be home that day, you're supposed to be able to see everything that's coming. Why does this matter? Because if somebody steals a parcel, if it gets delivered to a neighbor, if it doesn't show, you can see, wait a minute, I was supposed to get this bill, I was supposed to get this check, and it didn't show up. Uh-oh, you now have something you can report. Things get stolen all the time. Things get misdelivered all the time. This is supposed to be a partnership between you and a trusted postal service to say, we know this is coming. We took a picture of it long before it got into your carrier's hands. Download the Informed Visibility app, and you can get a picture in your daily inbox. This is coming. And then you are in partnership with the Postal Service as an accountability measure. Government is supposed to be of the people, by the people, for the people. Let the data work for you. So on to this point with Senator Schauer, this could be an interesting pilot project to run with one of the people in Postal Service, but it would have to be run in advance, where they partner and say, we think that there's something going on here, but it would have to be that they think something's going on the Postal Service side, versus a partnership with like the Division of Elections, to say they put a bar tracker on it and they're tracking the round trip from Division of Elections to the voter back to Division of Elections. There would have to be a nexus as to why they think something's going wrong on the Postal Service logistics side. That they think somebody, remember we heard those allegations down in lower 48 that there's a postmaster said backdate them all, or there was somebody pulling them out of the mail stream. That's the stuff that the Postal Service is interested in, is why do we have a break in our system? Is somebody messing with it? Then they would get involved and they would say, yeah, we're going to run an operation. So if we had something like that, I think that we would be able to make a case for partnership.
I'm sure that if you haven't talked to Senator Schauer, I'm sure he would love to hear that. Any other questions? Yes.
Thank you. Question, I'm not sure it's up your alley or not, but in the medical field, there is something called the Certificate of Need, which I'm not sure everybody here knows about. But it is a limitation on competition in the medical field. You can't just say, hey, I've got a couple $1 million laying around here. I think I will start a fill in the blank, emergency room, healthcare clinic, hospital. You have to get permission from the state government, which I would guess might be administration. But this limits the competition, keeping as we all know, prices on medical stuff incredibly high here. And they're found in almost 30 states. Some of them are worse than what we have, but the ones that don't have them are a lot better. And if you need another hospital, somebody can just start one. Do you know anything about this or any way to get rid of it?
I really appreciate that question. This has been brought to my attention because of my role as the plan administrator for Alaska Care. I don't think that we control the certificates of need and administration. I think they're controlled either in HES or over at Commerce, because I know that they control a lot of the certificates for businesses. And I think it's a good question to raise when we're in a time where we're trying to promote opening Alaska for business.
And Senator Wilson has got a bill on getting rid of, on certificate of need, and I believe it's Representative Rouster has one on the House side. I'd be remiss, I've been asked to ask this question by multiple people. Talk about DMV. There's a lot of information out there. I think some of it's disinformation. Please.
I'm really grateful for the opportunity to even address it. Can I get a show of hands first about who's even familiar with the topic? Because I might need to do a little bit of intro about what's going on.
What is it?
The topic on what's happening with the DMVs right now.
Where they're closing down.
So we have 2 people. Okay, so let me do the preface on the topic, Mike. In the budget proposal for this year, DOA put forward a budget proposal of transitioning 6 DMV locations to public-private partnerships. We've run private partnerships for over 40 years or so across the state. You might know some of them. There's like Tags and Titles, AAA, UMV. So you've probably seen these where you can go to these private partners for DMV services. So these are people who are in the same business as DMV. They do almost all the same services, except like our commercial services you can't do there, commercial driver license services you can't do there. They charge a service fee on top of the fees. That's how they stay in business. A lot of our customers prefer going there for various reasons. Even if they have, like out here, you have the option of going to a state-run DMV or a private-run DMV. Our private-run DMVs are doing just fine because people prefer going there. This is the story of how this started. Of the 6 offices, let me start there, are Eagle River, Delta Junction, Toke, Homer, Haines, and Valdez. This is how we put these proposals up. We were asked, we're facing how big is our deficit? $2 billion. We were asked to put forward budget reductions for every single office in DOA, okay? I do not have a large budget in DOA. I know the size of the reduction we're facing. My main concern is being able to continue to provide those vital services to all of our departments while dropping government costs going forward and continuing to be able to provide those critical services. I'm not going to be able to do massive PCN cuts. I'm not going to be able to drop my staff levels. Having been back in DC, when you're facing a budget gap this size, usually what happens are mass layoffs when you have to get rid of a budget crunch that big. So what we went through the exercise with our directors was, let's come up with ways we can offer significant budget reduction proposals without offering things that are going to really cut services either to our state departments or to Alaskans. This doesn't mean that we love these ideas. These are just ideas. And so we had to do them for every single department. The ones that, it's hard to come up with cost-cutting ideas for DMV. These were the ones for DMV. We picked these offices because they have significant profits in these offices, so we knew that these would be good candidates. We'd be able to attract business partners to these locations. We can't force a business partner to open up. You can't go to a private business and say, we're the government, you will open a business here. I mean, I think some people do think about government that way. That's not how I think about government. Government's supposed to serve people, not command people. But we knew that these would be good locations. We also know these are on transportation systems These are on the roads. These are not roadless communities. It would be really uncool to pull a DMV out of a roadless community if that's where we have a DMV location, because they would then have to fly and it would be really expensive for them. These are communities that have internet. 95% of our transactions can now be done online. If you don't know that, I want to share that with you. If you've been going to the DMV because you think you have to and you don't want to, guess what? You can do it by mail. You can do it online. Almost everything we do now can be done online. And so we thought, okay, these are good candidates. Is that simple? However, these are things we don't know. We don't know how these communities are going to feel about it. We don't know if these are actually good candidates, from those communities' perspectives. We did not go out and do a sense of the community. This is really up to those policymakers. If the governor passes these ones through, because we kind of put them up as proposals, we don't know what they're going to think. This goes in as these go up as a legislative, they're ideas that go before the legislature. They then decide whether to put them in a budget bill or not. That's it. This is not something that I can move on one way or another if the legislature doesn't move. In the same way that I can't plus up or minus down my budget if the legislature doesn't move. Does that make sense? It's a budget item. So we said, okay, legislature, you are facing a really big budget decision. If you need to cut $500,000 more, here are some ideas you could consider. Because we could do these services online. There's only 5 main reasons Alaskans have to come to the DMV. They're either once in a lifetime or once every couple of decades. One of the things that's really important for this group that people have heard is one of those reasons is seniors have to come in for a license renewal once a decade. So that came up in the legislature. They said, well, what about seniors? And I said, you have the power to change that. The only reason why this group of people has to come in to see me or one of my private partners in person is because there's a statute that says you have to come in. I'm not making you come in. So I said, since you lovely policymakers brought it up, why don't you change the statute? If you're concerned about it, you could say, or you could just renew online or on the mail. And they said, well, what about the vision tests? I said, why are DMV employees administering vision tests? Right? You could get the DMV employee to administer the vision test or give Alaskans the options of submitting a vision test online or in the mail. There's a lot of creative proposals here. I think politics is the art of the possible. I'm not the policymaker. I just sit over here and I just implement what you tell us to implement. You want seniors to come in, seniors come in. If you want seniors to be able to submit a vision test, don't you guys go to the doctor? Can you get your, right? Can the doctor make you stand back 20 feet? This seems like an easy solution that somebody besides me could come up with. And so I think they're considering that now, which would give us even more options for people. So all these ideas are just ideas. And so then I think they're considering it. If they don't want to close the DMVs, they've asked me this several times, are you going to close the DMVs? I don't know how I could because it's in our budget. It's the sense of the sense of the policymakers to keep those offices open. So what authority would I have to close down? I think I'd be way out of line because I think that there are how many branches of government?
3.
I learned this in 5th grade, and they are supposed to be a check and balance on each other, right? And so I'm like, no, these are really just ideas for them to consider. These are hard decision-making times. How much have we drained from the bank account? Exactly. We all have to make hard decisions. If this isn't the decision, great. I've got lots of other ideas, right? We've been over here in DOA coming up with lots of ideas that we can actually do, like transitioning timesheets. That's easy. These are easy decisions. Then there's the hard decisions. Fortunately, I don't have to make those decisions. Those are for the legislature to make. So I think that they're considering them. They're hard decisions to make. They're the ones who have to make the decisions that affect their community. I learned a long time ago when I was in DC, when you're going to pull jobs out of a community, which in this case we aren't, we would be able to transition our workers to telework jobs. I need good employees in the DMV. When you're going to pull a business out of a community, you have to let the legislators know. You have to let them make those decisions. These are their communities. Government is of the people, by the people, for the people. These people represent the people in these communities. That's what I believe and think. So these are just proposals. Interestingly, there is a couple articles in the newspaper yesterday, I guess. Some legislators have even proposed a bill to stop the transition of these DMVs. So we're talking internally, exactly, we're like, so you're proposing a bill to stop the budget bill? I think we now all understand why Juneau is in the condition it's in. So all I'm thinking is I'm just super confused about why they're confused about maybe they need a classification review on job duties. I don't know. It's all very humorous to me. That's what's happening with the DMVs, is we'll just let them decide what they want to do with their DMVs, and we're just going to keep continuing to spin up ideas on how we can help Alaskans save money and do business better. That's it. Are there any other follow-up questions on that? Yeah.
Not on that. Is the Division of Elections, are they under the purview of?
That's a great question. You go ahead. Yeah, so the people online can hear.
Well, I'm just wondering if you oversee
mic up
that,
so he can hear.
if you oversee that, or what? I guess I have questions about the Dominion machines. If Alaska has that, and are they connected to the internet? Since you talked about the IT department.
Those are all good questions. So the Division of Elections is under the authority of the Lieutenant Governor's office. They do have an IT system. I oversee IT for the state, except for the IT for the Governor's office and the Lieutenant Governor's office. We have not fully consolidated IT. So while I say that I have the statutory authority and the responsibility for IT for the state, until we consolidate IT, even in the departments, there are pockets and stuff that I don't see and I don't have full authority over yet. So it's a challenge right now on how the state runs IT. Even after we consolidate, though, I will not have authority over the governor's office and lieutenant governor's office at the Department of Administration. The lieutenant governor's office did a contract for the Dominion election, did a contract for new ballot systems at the beginning of 2019. They ended up selecting and procuring the Dominion machines in mid-2019. That's accurate.
So to get the answers, we need to talk to the Lieutenant Governor.
That's correct. The Lieutenant Governor's office is responsible for all responses on what they did with the Dominion system.
So maybe we can get that.
Yeah, we'll follow up with the Lieutenant Governor. I know I saw this on committee hearing the other day about the checkbook, the state's checkbook. That it's going to take quite a bit. There's at least what I was getting out of the testimony of the person that was from your office was saying this is going to take a lot of time, but yet I hear a lot of Senator Murkowski was going, wait a minute, we can do it. I've got people that can actually have done it in a couple hours. So can you talk to us about that checkbook? Because that's a big thing. For those that want to know what is going on with our state government, if we had the ability to go online and see what they're spending that money on, what that checkbook looks like, that would be great. But could you please talk to that?
I'm glad to. I will start by saying a transparent, accurate checkbook online is up and available for you right now at the Department of Administration. And then I'll tell you the story. This is extremely important to me, transparency in government. Last year, we run the accounting for the state. So OMB sets the budget, where are we going to go? And then we say, and this is where we actually went. So that's how that works. We run this is where we actually went. Last year, we got word that our checkbook online, which is giving you insight into, just like how you run your checkbook, this is how we actually spent money, was saying that some of our legislators spent millions of dollars on travel. That doesn't sound right. So we pulled open one, and it wasn't right. I don't think that inaccurate transparency helps anybody. No. That's not transparency. That's just gossip. That's not helpful. And so we said, okay, stop, pull it down immediately, and then quickly find out what's going on. This is what we learned. We have a new director of the Division of Finance. At the time, he'd been in, not not very long enough to know what he was doing, and he had new people on the staff. And they quickly figured out that somehow the coding and programming, there'd been coding on top of coding on top of coding, and that had gotten, the language had gotten confused. There's something wrong in the script, and then it was pulling from wrong or old dated reports. And since they weren't the ones who did the coding, they didn't know, they weren't going to be able to find out quickly where the, it's like a bad Excel formula. Like, where did we get the comma wrong, or what happened? And so Wilikowski then said, and I think this is the legitimate intent, and we share a common intent and common purpose on this. He said, I'm upset that the checkbook online is down. Admin is saying this is going to take a long time to fix because of what I just told you, where we're going, oh goodness, this looks like a heck of a mess. He did not know what we had seen, and so he said, I can fix this easily. So his staffer spent a couple of hours pulling from the exact same wrong place that our place was pulling from. So he then put up a checkbook online that also was inaccurate. And so we went, inaccurate transparency is not transparency. So then he started saying, this can't be that hard, and all the things he said. And we said, well, great job putting up a fake news checkbook. That's not it's a checkbook online, but it's, it's inaccurate, and that's just about as good as our inaccurate checkbook. That's not going to help anybody. So then we started working on fixing it, but we also had other major crises projects, like all of a sudden we're managing all of the coronavirus funds coming in and out of the jumbo state of Alaska, not just the money that came to the government, but the $6 billion that came to the state. All of those transactions went through my little tiny accounting shop. And so this was not something that we could put all of our time and attention on. We finally fixed it, got it back up this year. It took about $200,000 that we didn't have budgeted to us to fix it. And we got that back up and running a little bit ago. So you now can see it. We fixed all the programming stuff. What they're talking about now is, and this is also, I think Senator Wilikowski and I share this intent, and so does Hans, the head of finance. This would be great. There are other states that have a more robust, more in-depth, there's just more information in it, checkbook online. Wouldn't that be great? Yes. The question then is, do we as Alaskans want to spend the money it would take for us to augment our division of finance shop to do it? And it will take time, because we have other projects we have to get done, like finishing the upgrade to our massive accounting system to do that. And so then that's the question. Do you want to expand your budget gap, or do you want to close it? Those are again, back to hard decisions, right? But it just doesn't take that much to keep those DMVs open. It's $500,000 a year. Okay. Well, then it's going to cost us another $400,000 to get checkbook online. Okay. And now we just added another $1 million. And, these drops all add up. These are the hard decisions we have to ask. Or does a checkbook online we have suffice? I don't know. This isn't my call. Again, these are their calls. But that's what the conversation is. Does the one we have suffice, or do we want to supercharge checkbook online?
Anybody else got any questions?
I got basically 3 questions for you. We got the Department of Health and Social Services. They recently just announced that the governor is not going to split the department apart. Is this decision being based upon the people that are in the DHSS saying that you can't do this to us, it's a bad idea? I listened to a lot of the testimony that was given on when they had the committee meetings happening there in Juneau. And I got the impression that it isn't that it's not going to save us money. It will. It's going to definitely consolidate things up and streamline it so that we can actually make some meaningful cuts to our budget. Why did the decision to not split it apart happen would be number one. Number two, you were talking about we made all these cost savings by automating it all, computerizing it, making it so that you can do like DocuSign and all those other things. And I understand there's millions of dollars that have been saved by being able to do this, listening to the finance committees and them discussing it. How many millions are we talking about, and why are they telling us that they cannot reduce the employed positions that they have there or people that are hired to match the cost savings that they say they're not going to eliminate those people's positions yet, even though we know we don't need them anymore. And the third question that I have for you is there's a rumor out there that you are in 2022 going to be running for Senate for Lisa Murkowski's seat. Is this true?
All three fascinating questions.
Answer number 3
And
first.
trust me, we have been talking about this.
I've heard a lot about number 3. So on number 1, I don't know why that decision was made. I wasn't part of any of those
I do.
conversations.
I talked to Adam Crump.
Okay, so please share with us because I'm interested in that.
The reason that he's pulled that is because they did a Department of Law, I think it was, did a big, long 40-some odd page memo, and apparently there was 2 aspects that were statutory that couldn't be done by splitting it without changing the statute. One of them was talked about a lot during that House committee on crisis centers. That was a big aspect. So they have to actually, the legislature has to change the language and the statutes on that one, and then there was another one. I'm not. Adam didn't tell me what the other one was, but I didn't ask him. To be honest, but there's apparently 2 that has to be fixed legislatively before they can do that. So once they figure out how they're going to do that, they're going to resubmit the split again for this year. So that'll start the clock, the 60-day clock from that point. My understanding. That's the best I can. That's what I got straight from Adam Crump.
Can I jump in there? I have an issue with what we're talking about here. Okay. If you believe that we should be by the people, for the people, with the people, okay, and you tell me that the government says they can't do something, we own the government. Okay, when the government says, oh, we can't do this or we can't do that because of this, that, and the other thing, they're telling you that they're going to do whatever they want to do, and you don't have any say-so in it. Ultimately, we own the building, we own everything, we own the government. It's our decision what we will pay and to whom we will pay.
Oh, let me finish his questions real quick and then I'll come to you. Okay, so on number 2, so those cost savings that we're getting by digitizing, we reflect those in the rates that we drop to other agencies. So we have we're a service agency, so we trickle down and we end up we bill out to other agencies for our services and then they get their funds from the legislature. So all those savings are in those rates that we end up dropping. So our rates right now, I think, dropped almost $5 million to the other departments this year. That's how we reflect those. So we tally them up, and then some of the things we save in costs here, we then have to pay for more cybersecurity there. So it kind of balances out, and so it's not a direct, it's not like we just saved costs because then we have to pay more here. And so it's an accounting that we do with OMB. It doesn't translate to PCNs, and this is how it's a little bit complicated.
What's PCNs?
I'm sorry, thank you so much. Position control number is if you hear anyone in government talk about a PCN, it's a way of referring to an employee. So employees fill numbers that are assigned to a job. So everybody goes into a position control number and it's a job that they fill. So we're not reducing employees because of an assessment. And all of our assessments, because of the transparency, to your point, everything that we've done at DOA, we've put online. And the most interesting things are under what's new. So if you go to doa.alaska.gov and you're just super interested in the stuff I've talked about today, remember I told you we wanted to figure out how to do these things well before we did them? We did them under a assessment called the APEX assessment, the Alaska Administrative, I want to say Performance, Productivity, Excellence assessment. So it's APEX. And if you drop down on the right-hand side of the page, all of our APEX assessments are there. And then there's information also about the HR consolidation and I'm visualizing it in my head, and the procurement consolidation. And in there is the one about the IT assessment. And there's a pyramid slide that talks about all the things that they found in our current as-is assessment. And one of the things that they found is that we are woefully understaffed in Alaska for the size of the IT infrastructure that we have. And not only understaffed, but then we are under hired in those positions. And if we're going to securely, because cybersecurity is so important, securely maintain the size of infrastructure we have, we need to hire in all those positions and not cut anybody. My response also was, how much of this massive infrastructure do we actually need to maintain? Do we need all these applications and all these databases and all these servers? Or can we start eliminating a bunch of these things we don't need, because you have to pay for all that stuff? And so we started to target what we can actually reduce in size, so we don't have to actually hire even more people to maintain what we've bought over the decades, because we don't actually need all of that. But what they actually came in and identified is it would be very, very foolish for us to start reducing. What we need to do is hire up and then advance the skill set to actually manage the size of what we have. We have grown a very, 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 very large IT infrastructure, and then we've managed it with a very small workforce, which means we're always operating by emergency. And that's a very dangerous way to run IT. That's the answer to that question.
Follow up on Bert.
Follow up.
We hear a lot about unfunded positions.
Yes.
I know that's been talked about a lot. I think the state troopers was a big question here a few years ago. So how does DOA? How are you involved in getting rid of those unfunded? Can you get rid of unfunded positions or positions that have not been filled for 5 years, or is that strictly the legislature call on reducing those numbers within that department, because you have these unfunded, you have these ones that are not filled, we can get rid of. So is that your call, or is that legislature's call?
When we have positions that have gone, and it's not 5 years, after positions unfunded for over a year and a half, that's when we start considering, do we need this? And sometimes they're being held for FMLA, sometimes we were on a hiring freeze, so that's when we start looking at them and scrutinizing. We don't let them go 5 years. I don't let them go 5 years. But then it becomes first a conversation with OMB, and we start teeing it up to, that's when the scrutiny starts there. And then it does, anytime you start reducing my budget, whether it's for a position, whether it's for a DMV, that's a policy call. And I don't have, most of my policy call, like regulatory, it's all already been in a statute. Somebody's already given it to me. If it's a budget thing, it's OMB and the legislature. Yeah.
Okay, last question. Your last question.
So the third question, so it's obviously the talk of a lot of, isn't it all exciting to talk about politics here? We don't have much else to talk about. This is the answer I have to give in a venue like this. When I'm here talking about DOA as commissioner, I'm not allowed to talk about politics. It's an ethics thing. Yeah. But I've responded to this in other venues, and you can hear the same recorded answer.
Any other questions? It's 12:20. Yes, ma'am.
I have one I understand that next week we're going to be having, is it 2 visitors here? The Chinese president, and is it President Biden?
Communist
Not Biden, the
Yes.
Secretary of State.
I would like to know your take on it, and Governor Dunleavy's, please, and why they are coming.
Oh, yes. So
18th and 19th of March, the number I heard.
yes. So I read what you read. It seems like President Biden and the Chinese are coming here. I have not talked to the governor about this, so I don't know what his take is. So I think you're right that it's probably political. I think it's interesting. I figure that they probably wanted to save on airtime and not travel so far. I can't figure out why they're meeting here.
Sleepy Joe couldn't make it all the way to Beijing.
Yeah, I think the whole thing, yeah.
Alligator, helicopter ride, and just make sure there's a parachute for the pilot.
Did you have a question? Oh.
I just heard rumor here recently that Biden was wondering why we have so many ships coming up here with our freight, our food and whatever, when the airplanes come all the time. Is there anything on that?
You know, I hadn't heard that rumor, but maybe this would be a really great opportunity for Biden to learn more about how Alaska works. Because I think we all know why the ships come up here and why we don't do things by air cargo predominantly. So maybe this will be a good opportunity for him to understand more. And you know, I remember Lisa Murkowski said in one of her comments that she felt like he was targeting us on day one. And maybe if he understood more about us, maybe we won't be so targeted. So maybe this is a good thing.
Okay, I want to go ahead and shut this down. There's no other questions. Okay, Kelly, thank you so
Mike.
much for
It's
coming.
good to be here.
I really appreciate it. We're going to have to get you back more. A couple bills I forgot. SB 40, I think it's SB 10, HB 10. It's 104. It's either SB 104 or HB 104. It's HB because it's coming from Josephson. Everybody knows who Representative Josephson is, right? One of the biggest socialists down there. He wants to do a doubling of fuel tax. So it's a 8-cent gallon tax now. He wants to jump it up to 16, and it's 5 cents a gallon for boats. He wants to jump that up to 10. That's on top of, as best I know, because his staffer didn't say anything about it. That's on top of the 10-cent jump that Anchorage got through Comrade. What's his face? They used to be the government. They used to be the
City
mayor.
is separate from the states.
Yeah, Berkowitz. Yeah, Comrade Berkowitz when he jumped it up to 10. So that would end up my math says that means 26 cents a gallon tax in Anchorage. So that's something that that is there's public testimony on that on Tuesday. I think it's 1:30. You can pull it up on basis under transportation, and I'm going to be talking about it. You better believe I'm going to be talking about it.
State fuel tax right now is 10 cents a gallon, and the federal fuel tax is 25 cents a gallon.
It's actually 8 cents. The state, it's 8, but but you're right. Is that you got the state, you got the federal. Now he wants to double the state. So now when I came up here, in Palmer, if Fred Meyer's was $2.99 and Shell was $2.89, and I'm seeing $2.99, $2.89 all over the place. Within 3 months, within 50 days, since Biden has become occupying our house, so I will not call him my president. That we've almost jumped $1 a gallon, and now Josephson wants to jump it even more. Really? I mean, how many remember what we were paying under Obama? We were close to $4 a gallon.
There's no limit to the government's appetite.
No, there's no limit, none whatsoever. So that one I think is on Tuesday. Definitely, if you got the opportunity, call in and really go after it. I'm doing this as your president of our chapter, and I'm saying, because my testimony is going to be, my name is Mike Coons, and I'm speaking as president of the Matsu chapter of AMAC Action. And Josephson doesn't like hearing that, but that's okay. That's fine. That's what he gets paid the big bucks for. So that one's coming up. The ongoing with Senator Shower. My understanding is that SB 39 is coming back up for more hearings. Apparently, they've been working on SB 39, which is the elections, trying to fix a lot of the problems with elections. They've been doing some revision on that, so they'll be coming up with an updated version on that. They just did a hearing, and it was again sad that there was only 2 or 3 people that actually testified. I wish heck I'd known about it. I was a day late. But this one was again on elections, and all the testimony was racism, 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 and racism some more. So disenfranchising people, all that bunch of good, bull hockey. So those are still in the pipeline. Mike Shower is doing a yeoman's job on this. And if you ever get a chance to thank him, because he is really doing a heck of a job trying to get this through. The big question is, I think he can get it through the Senate. The question is, what is going to happen with the House? Because I got a sneaking hunch that as long as you got people like Tarr and Josephson and Clayman and Tuck and others, he's going to run into a brick wall with that in the House. But he's doing everything he can possibly to get her done. And that's, again, next election we really have got to get the House back. And I remember David Eastman made a comment, I think it was the day that Stutz got bumped up to Speaker. He goes, this is I think he said this was either the 3rd or the 4th election cycle where the House got a Republican majority elected. And now we're back to the Democrats controlling the House. And he laid it on the line. And he did, and he didn't, and I called him up about it because I said, your presentation was a lot better than it has been in the past too. So he did a really good job on that. He did a really outstanding job on really just laying out the problem. And that's the problem we have right now. I don't know how many here got to see the town hall with Laura Reinbold McKay and what's her name?
Kelly Merrick.
Kelly Merrick. Anybody see that?
You were there.
You're there? Oh, by the way, thank you. You did a good job. And especially when he had that telephone right next to you, so I know damn well she heard you. When you said, I stood up for you, I campaigned for you, and I'm not going to do it anymore. She heard it.
A number of other people did.
Yeah, a lot of other people did.
She did hear. I do believe she heard.
Oh, I know she did.
We had several meetings with 2 where she was specifically asked, are you going to caucus with the Republicans? She said yes.
I know.
To my face, as close as I am to him. So Kelly Merrick is a liar. And that's one thing I'd like to make a comment. This is really a question for you.
Okay, go ahead. So he can hear, because I want to get this on the video.
One of the things we've been very, very polite as conservatives to our communist counterparts. They're no longer Democrats. Anybody who thinks they are is a fool. And I think on this election thing, and I'm asking you a question. So far, we've been very nice to these people, and we like that. We don't want something that might could, dance still around. My question is, do we call them up and say, why do you support cheating on elections? Why are you cheating? Because that's what they're doing. They are arranging things to cheat. Now, I was very naive when I grew up. I thought election fraud, cheating on election, would probably be a capital offense. I really did. And I couldn't imagine, really, until, I'm 75 now, probably until I was 4 or 5 years ago, that somebody would actually wholesale cheat on an election. Yeah, one person, yeah, you some college student coming up, crossing the border from Wisconsin to Minnesota to, vote for Al Franken or something like that. But not on a massive scale. And that is what has happened. It is massive. It is intentional. This didn't happen by accident. I think it's time, this is my personal opinion. Politically, I'm not a very astute person. But I think it's time they have no problem in virtue shaming us. Immediately calling you a racist, homophobe, xenophobe, picklophobe, whatever. It's time to turn the tables. Cheating is something everybody dislikes, whether it's in school, in sports, whatever. When you seem to go to election, oh, well, they just were helping people to vote. That's a crock of it, we all know it. So I think it's time to look at these people, and every time you just corner them. Why do you want to cheat on elections? You are a cheater. You are a dishonest person. I do not want to associate with you. We've got to turn the tables, and I don't know how to do it. Maybe I'm wrong.
Kevin Meyer was here and lied to us when he goes,
Yes,
the voting machines in Alaska are not compromised. When he was on that screen, he's a liar, an absolute liar. Okay? And that's what we face, is lies, and the lies are run by evil.
Here's kind of answer to you. This just happened. When they were testifying on SB 83 the other day, the one testifier was from Planned Parenthood. And he lied through his teeth. Just absolutely lied through his teeth. And I'm sitting there going, he wants it so that, well, if a person inadvertently doesn't fill out the ballot correctly, that it still needs to be counted.
No.
So what I did, since I missed public testimony, I wrote back and I called out that guy. And I called out in writing in my testimony the lies that he did. And I'm sure there's going to be some people in the committees that we're going to cringe about this, but I'm at this point myself. Is a lot of times if I want to testify on a bill, I will write out what I'm going to say, and then I got it timed down, then I say it. So a lot of times people that are before me, that's like this guy, they're lying through their teeth, I don't really say anything about because I've got my testimony all done. This is where you guys come in handy. Be involved in these and be able to call in. And maybe what we need to do is to have a group of people on that phone ready to discuss or to testify, and then listen to what the other side is saying. And I've done this before, jotting down little notes, and then instead of talking about the bill specifically, going after the lies. That the person that testified previously that said that this, that's not true, and tell the truth. And if we do that enough, we go on the attack, which we don't do. You're right. We're too nice. We have been too nice for a long time. And we tried to play within the rules, and we tried to stay within the lines. I mean, it's so bad. See, speaking of inside the lines, I heard this yesterday, that the recall effort of Newsom, that the person that's in charge of going through all the petitions has already said that if a person's signature is outside the line of the box, it won't be allowed. I'm not kidding.
Well,
That's how bad this is.
That person was put in that position by Newsom.
Exactly. And they're going to, because they've got, I think the last number I saw was 1.95 million signatures. They need 1.5.
They're over 2 million now.
They're now over 2 million. So they still need that 1.5. She's already said she's going to disallow as many as she can. And so when you talk about, this is how nitpicky they get. So we have to be back on the attack. So it would be really great, and I don't know how we can really do it unless, I don't know how we can coordinate this. But if there's a bill that's coming up, and let's say I'm testifying for AMAC, our chapter, against or for a bill. If I can know that there's other people listening in on that and listening to what the socialists are saying, and then going after them. And you got 2 minutes. You can do a lot of damage in 2 minutes. A lot of damage. And are you going to change Kawasaki's mind? Probably not. Are you going to change Josephson's mind? No. But the other ones that are sitting there on that fence, maybe, and what's even more important, the people that are listening and not testifying, but just listening, when they hear that lie and nobody's countering it, if they hear that counter, what the truth is, now they're going, well, wait a minute. So that's maybe how we start. We need to start doing is instead of saying, okay, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to do a 2-minute testimony and get it all done, and then this is what I'm going to say. I'm thinking the other thing I could probably do. I'm thinking I just off the top of my head, because you can always submit your testimony in writing. So I could go, okay. My name is Mike Coons. I'm speaking for the Alaska Matsu chapter of AMAC Action. I have sent you a written testimony, but I do want to talk about what Planned Parenthood just said. Or I want to talk about what this person just said and call out those lies. I may just start doing that. Because in that way they're getting the written testimony of what I really wanted to say to begin with, pro or con of that bill. But at the same time, that gives me the opportunity to go, wait a minute, you just lied, and I'm going to call you out for a liar. And you can't say that, because they'll mute you real quick. You still have to stay within decorum, but there's a way of doing it. We can really go after these people that are lying.
That's my problem.
There was. This is going back to when Lynn Gaddis was representative. I was sitting there watching, it was on education, and I was just watching the committee, and I really wasn't planning on testifying about that particular bill, because I really wasn't totally up on it. And NEA, the president of NEA got on, and he's lying through his teeth. And he's attacking Lynn, and he's attacking, the committee, and just being an obnoxious jerk. And I was like, how the hell is this? So I picked up the phone, called the number, and I opened it up and said, my name is Mike Coons, I'm from Palmer, I'm speaking for myself. I really wasn't planning on talking until NEA came up and started lying. Lynn Gaddis was sitting there, and she said that because she's actually started to crack a smile. And they're not supposed to be. They're not supposed to give you any, facial feedback. It took everything. She told me, I talked to her afterwards, she said, it took me everything. I was biting my tongue to keep just flat out laughing. And the guy from the NEA did not like it. I didn't care. So maybe we need to start pushing back hard. And I think I like what you're saying.
One comment on it. They're not used to it.
No.
We're used to taking these hits and be called, as they recent homophobe, pickleball, as far as I can remember on all that. But they aren't used to it.
No.
They get really upset. They may come after you another way. So just, but they don't. And if we can do it fast and hard.
Yeah, and I agree.
You don't win a defensive.
Exactly.
Very few wars have been done.
You don't win on defensive. It's what was it? We're not retreating. We're attacking from a different direction. But I think we need to start fighting back. You know, they're not, and like you said, they're not used to that. So I think if we start doing that, we can start winning.
So can we get the lieutenant governor in here and maybe showers? It doesn't have to be together, but some more information.
Let me see what I can get. I bet you I could probably get Senator Showers a little probably easier than the lieutenant governor right now, just from a time frame aspect. But I will reach out to the lieutenant governor as well and see what I can do.
Yeah, I like to go right to the top rather than.
Oh yeah. Oh, I agree. You know, in one of the comments, I talked to the lieutenant governor here recently because I know Kawasaki wanted lieutenant governor at that committee hearing, and I told the lieutenant governor, I said, you need to show up. I said, at least show up and show that you're showing an interest and answer some questions or make your statement, and then let your division of elections answer the questions that you may not have the direct answer to. But at least doing that is not showing that you're not willing to show up.
Or cover up the.
Yeah, and unfortunately he didn't show up, but I tried. Okay. A bit of good news, because we're getting ready I want to shut this down. Some good news. Palmer Senior Center is opening up March 22nd. And they're really looking forward to this. So they'll have their lunch that day, and I know that I talked to Elaine, and she's just ecstatic about getting them open. Along with that, our next meeting will be at the Palmer Senior Center. It'll be the first time in a long time.
I may need directions.
So yeah, so it'll be April 10th, I think it is. Same time, but different place. So we're going back to Palmer. As far as Chugiak Senior Center goes, that's still up in the air. He's running into problems with the Muni. It turns out, I talked to Phil the other day, I didn't know this, but the Chugiak Senior Center, that building complex is owned by the municipality. So the Muni has the ability to put the shaft to them if they so choose. So he's fighting like crazy because they're saying the DHSS has this requirement that you have to have 80% of the people that have been vaccinated before they can reopen, and that's not the case. So he's working with Adam Crum on that to work back with the Muni. Now the Muni can turn up and come up with a different idea as soon as they get that one answer. Who God only knows. But he's hoping that what I'm kind of thinking is we'll do our next meeting at Palmer, our May here, and I'm hoping Chugiak in June. And then we'll be back to the rotation. So for those of you like, Gary that drives from Anchorage, you won't have to drive so far once every 3 months. Those that coming in from, northern Wasilla, we'll end up having to drive a little bit further to Palmer and, right on down the line. So I love this. I want to get this rotation back. It's coming. It's coming. So I'm really, really ecstatic on that. Phil's going through a lot right now with the Muni. He doesn't know.
With any luck, we'll have a new
mayor.
Yeah.
Again, in closing on that, for those that are watching from Anchorage, get out and vote. Get your friends out to vote. And I think this is just my personal opinion. Since there is in-person voting in Anchorage, do that instead of the mail-in. But as I said earlier, if you get a bunch of ballots, hold on to them. Get hold of Mike. I mean, it's a municipality election, but it has the implications that he's looking at. Because if we can show, here, Mike, here's a stack of ballots that went to the wrong people, or on the ground, or all the other things that are going on, that gives him that power. That gives him that ability to really start attacking on this. And so if you see that, and then like I said, if you're, I would love to see Anchorage conservatives in Anchorage do kind of like a mailbox watch, like a neighborhood watch. You kind of rotate, like, okay, we're going to do 2 hours each and sit there with the car, and we're going to, every time somebody comes up, we'll have them on videotape. And if they stuffed 10 ballots in there, you got them. We can take that, and that's actionable in court. So, plus the fact that it's fraud, and it can be charged criminally. So, protect that vote in Anchorage, because God knows we need to get Anchorage back. Yes, ma'am.
I'm asking for a friend. Who should they vote for in Anchorage?
Okay, I cannot. AMAC action cannot endorse a candidate.
That's what I'm not asking for.
Okay, so anybody want to take that, Gary? Yeah, this is individual points of view.
Right.
This is not AMAC action endorsement.
Okay, thank you.
I'm for Robbins, but the other guy that's right there with him, I wouldn't have a problem with him either. They're both really close to being exactly the same.
We agree with Gary. We're from Anchorage.
Who is that?
Robbins and Bronson. Those two. Yeah.
Is of Anchorage. That's
Okay,
Okay,
well,
yeah,
let me
those
just
two.
for again, this is not an endorsement. I gotta
Right.
say that. How many here are looking at Bronson? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and how many are for Robbins?
I guess I'm alone.
Okay, that's fine. That just kind of gives maybe Mr. Bronson and Mr. Robbins want to watch this and they have a good idea. But yeah, this is really important, election, because when you figure Anchorage is a population of 300,000, where Anchorage is a third of or it's more than a third of the population of the state of Alaska, and we got a communist-run city that's over a third of our state. We got to take it back. Well, no two ways about it. But anyway, any closing? Yes, ma'am.
I'm from Anchorage,
Eagle River,
Eagle River, and I'm District 14. I've just been put on the recall committee for getting rid of Kelly Merritt. I just wanted to share with you how important it is at this time to vote. Locally, we're going to need to make the difference, because federally, when I look at it, I feel hopeless. But we need to start fighting. And what I found out is that Planned Parenthood, and I'm a teacher, I'm a retired teacher, I taught at Birchwood, and my kids were reading, all of them at the end of kindergarten. And there's 3 of those schools, ABC schools, in Anchorage out of 70-some schools. I want you to think about that. And Planned Parenthood is coming into the local districts, and they are picking and endorsing candidates for mayor and for school board.
Mhm.
Now, if Planned Parenthood picks the mayor, federally, or money from Planned Parenthood can go into the schools. They now have books with word vocabulary, transgender vocabulary for 4-year-olds. They have kindergarten programs that are transgender. They have transgender men dressed as women doing dances at Lusac Library. This is not okay. Kids need to learn to play. They need to be kids. They need to learn to read and write and spell. They don't need any of this other crap. there are 3 candidates running for mayor who are endorsed by Planned Parenthood in this election. And there are 3 that are endorsed by the school board. They're going to be school board candidates, and I can't believe that they would want to be involved with this and be involved with kids. So Jim Menery at the Alaska Family Council has been doing research on this, and I suggest you go check it out. But I am mad. I'm usually very quiet, but I am mad as hell. And I've been on the radio. I never go on the radio. But please pay attention if you are in Anchorage, and if you're in Matsu and you have local elections coming up, they're coming for you too.
Yeah.
They want all our kids. And I just feel hopeless, but I've got to start speaking out, and that's what I told people on the radio. I've got to speak out, and you've got to check out, who the candidates are. Jim Menery is fighting as hard as he can to get the word out. Alaska Watchman, where's a wonderful lady who told me about Alaska Watchman? There's an interview on their video of Robbins being interviewed by Joel Davidson, and an interview with Bronson. Okay. And they're both good interviews, and I think either one of them would be great. I think they're honest, and I think they're good.
Would you pass the mic to Robert, because I
Yes.
want Robert to talk about his meeting with those candidates while we're on that. That's a really good segue.
And the 3 school board.
And the 3 school board. Again, we cannot endorse anybody.
No, but we can mention.
But we can endorse their policies. I got that from Jamie the other day.
Well, I understand we're trying to end this meeting. And my name's Robert Coulter. I'm doing the Anchorage AMAC last Tuesday, which was the 9th. We had 91 people there. It was amazing. Next, April 13th, we're scheduled for Kelly Tshibaka to do that again. And I'll pose a few questions to her to craft her time on April 13th so that it won't be identical to what you saw today. That's coming up. And this last event, I put together prior to the April 6th election. So we had 3 school board members that were admittedly conservative, and there are other school board members that I did not invite. Then there were 2 mayoral candidates that were admittedly conservative, and there were other Anchorage mayoral candidates that I did not invite. And I had hour and some minutes to try to fit all those people in. So it was remarkable. And I'm not so sure what points of view you suggested that I talk about here in these waning moments.
Give the 3 names of
the 3 names, yeah, you could write them down if you care to.
I've got them written down at home,
Yeah,
I forgot.
First name, most memorable, Judy Elledge. Judy Elledge. Okay, second one, Kim Paulson. Third one, Sammy
Brand.
Those are the 3 that I'm familiar with. There may be a 4th one out there that I am not able to speak right now, just don't recall the name, of a conservative, and all the rest are not conservatives. All the rest will communize your children, your grandchildren. They will do that.
I'm leaning toward Stewart for the 4th one.
For the 4th one?
She's CB also, she's opposite Judy Elledge. So that's
Marilyn
quite a
Stewart,
competition. Marilyn Stewart.
She's conservative.
She is.
That's
she
the
is
black.
conservative.
That's the black one.
Yeah, she's.
My understanding for the school board is that the selection process is different than the mayoral selection process.
Right.
The school board's positions are that there are 4 openings.
Right.
And any boxes that you select, you are to select 4, and they go into those boxes. It doesn't matter if it's seat G or seat B or seat E. You simply are going to pick 4, and those top 4 will go into the 4 openings.
Marilyn Stewart is at
Marilyn Stewart.
Okay, so there's our 4.
Carol, don't hang on.
Okay. The other two gentlemen, you wish them well. And I don't know what else is, I won't say any more about it in lieu of time. I'll be here afterwards if you care to chat. Thank you.
And Carol, you want to do a quick treasure? I should be doing this at the start, but. And thanks for what we got in the envelope today. I appreciate that.
Last month was a bonus month for us. We collected $345. Yay. And that brought our balance up to over $1,300. So we got very generous because we had a little more money. So we made a donation to Politadick. Thank you, Bert, for your help here of $200. And a donation to the Alaska Policy Forum of $800. And so now our balance is $1,017. So thank you for your contributions today. Every little bit helps, and we appreciate it.
So, Faye, do you have something left?
No.
Okay. Anybody else? Well, I had yourself a great time.
One
Gary.
thing, we always talk about communism and socialism. And that black gal that I cannot remember her name now, that really conservative. I just finished her book.
Marilyn Stewart.
No, the black gal that wrote the book.
Oh, sorry.
I just completed her book, and she had a very good description of the difference between communism and socialism.
Can you put the microphone closer to your mouth?
She said socialism, you vote the people and rule you. Communism, they just take over.
Is that Candace Owens? Candace Owens?
Yes.
Yep.
You're about to lose yourself.
See that again. What was the difference between socialism and communism?
Socialism, you vote in the people that are going to rule you. Communism, they just take over. It wasn't exactly those words, but that's
the idea.
Okay, folks, drive safely. Get out and enjoy this beautiful last 2 weeks of winter.
So much Tom can't go. I have a card for him.
Thanks for everybody tuning in today. We got to hear from Alaska State Commissioner of Administration, Kelly Tshibaka. I am sorry if I slaughtered your last name there. She gave us a very good breakdown of what is going on down in Juneau, the different things that she's organized and helped put together, the suggestions that they have given to the legislator on how they can streamline our system, come up with a lot more better organization, be able to basically cut the darn budget. Unfortunately, I hear the same song and dance coming from them. Statutes got to be changed. There's things in our Constitution that prevents them from doing it, like the DHSS. Supposedly, the splitting of them is a possibility of coming back up again this year. And the reason why is because they have laws that are within our Constitution that need to be changed first before they're able to actually split the department in half. So a little bit of good news there. Touched upon a bit about election integrity, about how this virus has consolidated departments, put everything more online, the ability to be able to streamline things that was being done manually by signature or by a hand, that was all done by paper, is now all been being done electronically. It has cut millions, multi-millions from the budget. She did suggest that it was about $5 million. I know it's a lot more than that. So it's something that we really got to consider. But those job positions that were eliminated by doing all this streamlining, unfortunately, those jobs are still there. People are still being paid to do those jobs, even though those jobs are not needed anymore because it takes less manpower to process all that paperwork now that it's all done electronically. Watch the video. It's well worth it. Make sure you share it with all your friends and family out there so other Alaskans are able to keep up with what's going on here within our state. Don't forget to like and share this video. Facebook squeals on you if you don't. And there's lots of other things that are going to be going on this weekend. I know Senator Shower is making rounds today. He was at the Donut King earlier today, and he was going to another event. I can't find nothing online for what he's got planned or going on. Hopefully somebody out there may know. Leave it in the comments so other people can be able to go participate. Go to my website, Politadick.com. Click that donate button, click that support button. All proceeds go right back into making sure that I can make it to places like this to be able to live stream events so that you guys get the latest and greatest whenever I'm available, to be able to get out here and hear from people that you would normally not be able to hear from, uncut, unvarnished, asking the hard questions that you won't be hearing them say when they get to Juneau, because they got to be politically correct and follow the script. Where here they get to subvert themselves just a little bit and not quite follow the script that you would hear when you could see them down in Juneau. So it's well worth tuning in and sharing with other people. Again, go to my website, Politadick.com, click that support button, and all proceeds go right back into basically cover the gas money just to be able to make these events. You all have yourself a great day. Don't forget, like and share.